I never thought a wedding, my son's wedding, would end up being the moment I lost all trust in him. I had just dropped the envelope into the ivory wedding card box. A quiet, generous surprise, a $20,000 honeymoon check, and the signed deed transfer to half of my house. I'd spent weeks planning it, even rehearsed the little smile I'd wear when they found it. I wanted to give them something lasting, something that meant security, that meant family. But when I stepped into the restroom, just moments later, purse on my shoulder, the sound of Chloe's voice bounced off the marble walls like a slap. "We'll put this Karen in a nursing home in no time. Then the house is ours." At first, I didn't breathe. I just stood there, half in, half out, clutching my bag like it could anchor me. They didn't know I was there. I could hear the spray of perfume, the click of her lipstick tube. I recognized her friend Tara's laugh. "Low, cruel," Chloe went on, her voice light and smug. "Brian doesn't think she'll last more than 2 years. She's already tired all the time. Once it's in our name, we'll remodel and flip it. Easy. Tired." She said I was tired. I stood motionless behind the door, heartbeat thudding in my ears. They talked like I was already gone, like I was a burden. They were just waiting to bury in paperwork. Brian, my son. My sweet, gentle boy who used to climb into my lap just to smell my sweater. He'd told me last week that Chloe made him feel settled, that she had vision. I didn't realize the vision included erasing me. I backed out of the bathroom before they noticed, my heels tapping too loud on the tiles, breath shallow and clipped. My fingers were trembling, but my jaw locked tight. No tears. Not here. Not yet. At the reception, people toasted and clinked glasses. Brian twirled Chloe around the dance floor like they were living a fairy tale. And I stood there, smiling for pictures, laughing in the right places. A prop in their perfect day. All the while, that sentence rang in my head. "We'll put this Karen in a nursing home in no time." They meant me. Not even your mom or Ruth. Just Karen. Some throwaway old woman from their social media memes. A walking punchline, a stepping stone to real estate profit. And in that moment, something hardened inside me. Not hate, not even revenge, just a quiet, cold understanding. They would not win. No one could tell that my heart was cracking in two beneath the sequined dress I'd bought just for this day. Brian sat beside me, cheeks flushed from dancing, his hand wrapped around Chloe's waist like she was the beginning and end of his world. He leaned in and said, "You okay, Mom? You look tired." That word again. Tired. I just smiled and patted his cheek. "I'm fine, sweetheart." Just soaking it all in. I didn't look at Chloe. I couldn't. Not yet. If I met her eyes, I might spit something I couldn't take back. So I smiled at the guests across from me, asked about their drive up from Milwaukee, nodded politely as they gushed about the food. Then came the cake cutting. All eyes on the couple. I used the moment. I slipped out of my chair, slow and steady, like I was just heading to the restroom again. Nobody noticed. Why would they? I was the quiet, older woman, the backdrop, the one who paid for half the venue, but didn't ask for a say in the menu. I walked to the gift table. My heels didn't make a sound on the ballroom carpet. The card box was still there. White, lace-trimmed, already stuffed with well wishes and gift cards. I lifted the lid, reached inside, and found the thick cream envelope I had tucked there not an hour ago. My handwriting on the front. Their future inside. I took it back. Smooth, discreet, like it was mine. Because it was. No one saw. No one stopped me. No one cared. Outside in the corridor, I opened the envelope just to check. The check was still there, $20,000 written in my neat cursive. The signed deed to half the house I'd built with my late husband. Still there, too, folded clean in the back pocket. I stared at it. My chest ached like something inside me was bruising. I thought of the moment Brian was born, red-faced and howling. I'd held him to my chest and whispered, "You're mine. I've got you." Now he was hers, and she was already planning where to put me. I took out my phone and walked to the far end of the hallway, behind the pillar by the coat check. Dialed the bank, Pressed 0 until I got a human voice. "I need to cancel a check," I said. "Immediately." The woman on the line asked for details. I gave them. Calm, exact, cold. Within minutes, it was done. The funds wouldn't clear. Chloe and Brian would never see a cent. I folded the deed and slid it back into my purse. My heart didn't race. It slowed. Something had shifted. I walked back into that reception hall like nothing had happened, because for them, nothing had. The music swelled. The bride twirled in her white gown. The guests cheered when someone caught the bouquet. And I sat back in my seat, smiling, waiting, because now I knew something they didn't. They had just stepped into a game they didn't understand. And I was done playing nice. 2 days later, I was folding laundry when the first text buzzed through. "Hi, Mom, smile. Just thinking about you. Hope you're resting and drinking water droplet sparkling heart." I stared at it, then at the name. Mom. She'd never called me that before, not even after the wedding. It felt like someone walking into your home and calling themselves the owner. I didn't respond. I kept folding dish towels, Cliff's old undershirts I still couldn't throw away. Then came the next message. "Let me know if you need help with bills or errands. Brian and I want to make sure you're comfortable. Smile." Help with my bills. The same bills I've paid alone since I was 27, the year Cliff and I bought this house. The same bills Brian and Chloe assumed they'd be inheriting, maybe even rerouting soon. The third message came that evening. "There's this super cute senior living community nearby. We should tour it just for fun. No pressure, red heart." I laughed out loud. Just once. Dry and sharp. It was starting. They didn't know the check was canceled. Didn't know the deed was back in my drawer. They thought they had me, wrapped up in lace and promises, softened by sentiment. But this wasn't love. This wasn't care. It was a strategy. She thought I'd melt under the attention, the sudden offers, the syrupy text bubbles. She didn't realize I'd already heard her real voice, the one behind the marble wall, the one that said, "We'll put this Karen in a nursing home." I sat down on the edge of the couch, phone still glowing in my hand. My reflection stared back from the blank TV screen. My face looked calm, almost soft, but inside, I was making a list. I started a fresh page in the little notepad I kept by the lamp. I wrote the date, and under it I copied each message exactly, word for word. Not because I needed proof, but because I needed to remember. How quickly they shifted, how easily they lied, how practiced the charm became once they thought they owned something. Brian called that night. "Hey, Mom," he said, sounding casual. "Chloe said she reached out. She's been thinking maybe we should come by this weekend, help you get things sorted after the wedding. Unpack, organize stuff. Sorted. Organized. Boxed up, probably." "Oh, that's sweet," I said, my voice like warm syrup. "But I'm actually pretty tired. Just planning on resting this weekend." There was a pause, then a chuckle. "Yeah, of course. Take your time." They were watching the clock, but I'd stopped playing by theirs. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet living room and stared at the bookshelf across from me. Cliff's Navy veteran flag sat folded there. A picture of Brian at his high school graduation. Our wedding photo. For years, I thought I was preserving a legacy. Now I realized I'd been setting a trap. For myself. But it wasn't too late. They thought I was soft, vulnerable, tired. Let them think that. Because while they were planning how to box me up, I was about to show them how it feels to be left out of my story. The hallway outside their apartment smelled like garlic and burned cheese. "Mom!" Chloe greeted me with that tight-lipped smile she always used when she was forcing herself to play nice. "So glad you could make it." Brian hugged me. He felt smaller than I remembered. Maybe it was the way he avoided my eyes. Inside, the table was set with mismatched plates and a single candle. The lasagna she served was burnt around the edges and still cold in the middle. I ate it anyway, slowly, smiling when I had to. "I'm still learning," Chloe said with a little self-deprecating laugh. "But hey, at least I didn't order takeout." I nodded. "It's got good flavor." I didn't lie. But I didn't elaborate. She poured wine. Red. Cheap. She barely sipped hers. Brian drank fast. refilled twice. His knee bounced under the table like it was trying to run from something. We chatted about the honeymoon that never happened. I told them the check must have gotten lost or voided. A mystery, really. I kept my face neutral as Chloe's smile faltered for just a second too long. Then she reached into her purse. I wanted to show you something, she said, sliding a glossy brochure across the table. We just thought, maybe, it could be, fun. I looked down. The modern, retirement village, live among friends, full-color images of smiling seniors doing yoga and painting flower pots, a sunlit dining hall, a pool, a quote in bold italics, freedom, care, and community for your golden years. I blinked once, twice, then looked up at her. You first, I said. She froze. What? She asked, laughing nervously. You move in first. Test it out. Let me know if it's everything the pamphlet promises. Brian cleared his throat, but didn't speak. He looked anywhere but at me. The silence stretched. I reached for my wine glass and took a sip. Sweetheart, I said. I appreciate the effort. I really do. But let me offer a suggestion. They both looked up. I could feel their hope floating in the air like smoke. Instead of shopping for my future, maybe shop for your own. You've got years ahead of you. Plan that. Chloe's face stiffened. The corners of her smile held, but her eyes went hard. Brian shifted uncomfortably. Mom, she was just being thoughtful. I know, I said, meeting her eyes. That's what makes it so funny. She took the brochure back like she'd just shown me a dirty magazine by accident, folded it slowly, too carefully, like paper that thin could still wound her. After dinner, I helped stack plates in the sink. Chloe said, We just want you to be comfortable. I turned toward her, drying my hands with a towel. You know what's comfortable? I said, not worrying about who's smiling to your face while plotting behind your back. Her eyes narrowed. I turned away before she could respond. I left 10 minutes later. No hugging this time. Just the quiet closing of a door. And for the first time in months, I felt taller as I walked down the hallway. Like someone who'd just stepped off a sinking ship and found firm ground again. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that used to bring comfort. Now it just echoed. I sat on the edge of my bed, the old quilt pulled up around my hips, notebook balanced on my knees. The same notebook I used to write grocery lists in. Now it held something heavier. I turned to a fresh page and wrote the date. Then I began listing, not groceries, but grievances. What I gave. Minus $20,000, honeymoon check, revoked. Signed deed to half the house, retrieved. Years of help, cash gifts, holiday hosting. My dignity in pieces. I stared at the page. The ink smudged a little under my palm. Then I flipped to the next and started a new list. What I can still take back. Full ownership of the house. My will. My peace. The version of me they think they're dealing with, I wasn't crying. Not anymore. That part of me had dried up the night I heard Chloe's voice in the restroom. What replaced it was something quieter, steadier. Not anger, exactly. Not revenge. Resolve. I wasn't planning to destroy them. I wasn't going to scream or slam doors. I didn't need drama. I needed strategy. I needed a way out. Not just from them, but from the role I had played too long. The good mother. The quiet woman. The easy target. I picked up my pen again and wrote one more sentence. I don't want revenge. I want my dignity. And my peace. The pen paused there. My hand ached from gripping it so tight. Across the room, Cliff's reading lamp still sat on his nightstand. I hadn't touched it since the night he passed. It used to hum softly when it warmed up. He always said that old lamp was a truth teller, because it only flickered when the power surged. I clicked it on. It stayed steady. I stood up and walked slowly to the closet. The file box was still there. Brown, battered. Inside it, every document that mattered. The house deed, the living trust, the insurance policies, the original will with Brian, listed as sole heir. I pulled it all out. One by one, I laid them on the bed. I'd built a life with Cliff, 38 years of hard work and small savings. The house was bought in pieces, refinished floors, painted walls, new windows when we could afford them. And now Chloe thought she could slide in with her manicured hands and take it. Not anymore. I put everything back into the box. Tomorrow, I'd call my lawyer. First thing, I'd make sure every paper reflected the woman I was now, not the woman who let people smile at her while digging their claws in. I slid the box back into the closet and closed the door. Before turning out the light, I looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look different. Not really. But inside, something had shifted. I wasn't preparing for battle. I was preparing to leave the battlefield entirely and take all my power with me. I parked 3 blocks away on purpose. The walk helped, gave me time to gather myself. The county records office sat tucked between a bail bond shop and an old bakery that still smelled like childhood. The inside was fluorescent and beige, the kind of place where time moved slower and the walls held secrets. I stepped up to the counter, careful with my words. "Hi," I said, sliding over my ID. "I need to pull the deed record for my property, just to verify ownership." The clerk, a young woman with chipped nail polish and a gentle voice, typed away. Her screen glowed green in her glasses. "It's still listed in your name, Ruth," she said after a moment. "Sole owner." I exhaled. Not a sigh. A release. "Would you like a certified copy?" she asked. "Yes. 3, please." I waited on the hard plastic bench while the machine hummed behind her. When she handed them to me, I held them like they were gold. Because they were. I walked next door to the law offices of Goldman and Hart. My lawyer, Harold Goldman, was a no-nonsense man, with laugh lines and a mind like a filing cabinet. He'd handled our estate planning back when Cliff was still alive. He looked up from his desk and said, "Ruth, you look like you've got something to say." I placed the documents on his desk and sat down. "I want to update my will, effective immediately, and I want to undo a few mistakes." He didn't ask for details, just nodded and opened a fresh folder. We spent the next 2 hours going line by line. Brian was no longer sole beneficiary. He would get something, eventually, but not the house, not the bulk, not without oversight. The new documents would name a trust. I'd retain full ownership while living and control how everything passed down afterward. Conditions, timelines, protections, and most importantly, the house was staying in my name. When we were done, Harold leaned back in his chair. "Want me to deliver the update to Brian officially?" he asked. "No," I said. "Not yet." He smiled. Playing it smart. I'm done playing dumb." I left his office with a folder under my arm and a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. But I wasn't done. I stopped at a quiet cafe and sipped black tea in a corner booth. Then I made a second call. The realtor, Mrs. Cleary, picked up on the second ring. She'd sold 2 houses on our block last year, both over asking. Professional, discreet, the kind of woman who knew how to work without leaving footprints. "I'm considering listing," I told her. "Wonderful," she said. "Do you need time to prep? Or should we schedule a walkthrough? I'll be ready soon." But not a word to anyone. Not yet. My lips are sealed. I hung up, slipped the phone back into my purse, and watched the steam rise from my tea. The walls around me didn't feel like traps anymore. They felt like choices. Everything they thought was theirs was still mine. And soon, they'd learn the difference between a gift and a loan with conditions. I don't know what I expected when I agreed to meet them for brunch. Maybe civility. Maybe another performance. What I got was something worse. We sat at a little bistro Chloe had picked, the kind of place with avocado toast that costs $15, and chairs too modern to be comfortable. She ordered a turmeric latte like she actually enjoyed it. Brian just smiled and sipped his coffee, glancing between us like a referee waiting for the first punch. Then it came. "We were thinking of redoing the kitchen when we move in next year," Brian said casually. Slicing his waffle like this was just a Sunday chat. I didn't blink. "When you move in," Chloe leaned in, cheerful as a Stepford wife. "You said the house was our wedding gift, remember?" There it was. The test. The push. the assumption cloaked in sweetness. I took a bite of my toast and chewed slowly, swallowed, then smiled like I didn't feel the sting. "Sure thing, honey." She relaxed. Brian reached for the syrup. They thought they'd won. Again. I sipped my tea and nodded along as Chloe launched into renovation plans, knocking down the wall between the kitchen and dining room, expanding the pantry, replacing my curtains because they were a little grandma, no offense. None taken. I'd stopped expecting grace from her a long time ago. "You'll love it," she said. "So much brighter, more open. We'll even keep your bedroom the same, if you want to stay with us sometimes. You know, holidays and stuff. Stay. With them. In my house." I forced a chuckle. "That's generous of you." She waved her hand like she was already decorating. "It's just better for everyone. Downsizing is smart, and we'll be right there to make sure everything's taken care of. No more bills, no more stress. No more ownership," I thought. Brian added, "And when kids come along, it'll be perfect." My grip on the fork tightened. Kids, of course. That was the next play. Seal the deal with grandbabies. Make me feel grateful just to be nearby. The waiter came by with the check. Brian reached for it, but Chloe stopped him. No, she said. "Let me use Mom's card." She looked at me expectantly. I smiled, slowly reached into my purse and pulled out cash. "Oh, I'm old school," I said, laying 2 20s on the table. "I don't like leaving paper trails." Her smile faltered. We stood up and exchanged hugs. I let Chloe hold on just a second longer than necessary. Her perfume was too sweet. Artificial, cloying, like her kindness. As we parted, she said, "We'll send you some sketches of the remodel. Just ideas, of course." I nodded. "You do that." I walked back to my car, calm, deliberate, slow. They didn't realize they'd just revealed their full hand. They weren't waiting. They were expecting. Planning for a future they thought already belonged to them. But here's the thing about brunch invitations wrapped in charm and mom nicknames. Sometimes they're not really about bringing you closer. They're just steps in the campaign to erase you. And now that I'd seen the strategy, I was done playing along. The pen felt heavier than it should have. Mrs. Cleary slid the papers toward me, page by page. "You can take your time," she said gently, "but I think you'll be pleased. This market's strong, especially for a house like yours. Good bones, history, charm." She didn't say the kind of house young couples like Brian and Chloe dream of, but I heard it anyway. I flipped to the last page, signed my name with slow, steady strokes. "There," I said. "It's listed." It was done. My house, the one with Cliff's garden stones still lining the back path, the one with Brian's height chart penciled inside the hall closet, was officially on the market. I didn't flinch. I didn't cry. Not even when I handed over the spare key I used to keep on a string above the doorframe. Mrs. Cleary smiled, not warmly but professionally. She knew how to handle women like me. Women with well-kept homes and quietly broken hearts. Women who'd reached the point of enough. "We'll have at least 3 showings by the weekend," she said. "This won't take long." I nodded. "That's fine." But I didn't tell Brian or Chloe. Not a word. I drove home slowly, hands loose on the steering wheel. Every block felt like a farewell tour. The coffee shop where Cliff and I used to sit on Sundays. The library where I took Brian for story time. All of it part of the same history I was choosing to walk away from. Not because I didn't love it, but because I refused to let it become theirs. Rewritten, repainted, renamed. They would have turned my living room into a game room. My garden into gravel. My home into their prize. No, I wasn't going to hand over my life so they could carve it into theirs. When I got home, I poured a cup of tea and sat by the window, just as the first leaves started to fall. The maple Cliff planted was turning already, gold and red, loud and defiant. The phone buzzed that evening. A message from Brian. "Hey Mom, Chloe's wondering if you're free next weekend. Maybe we can come by and measure for the kitchen?" I stared at the screen, then put the phone down without responding. The late September air had a crispness to it. Not cold, just honest. The kind of air that tells the truth before anyone else does. The late September air had a crispness to it. Not cold, just honest. The kind of air that tells the truth before anyone else dares to. She walked in like she owned the place, already eyeing my kitchen like it was hers. As she moved through the space, she started rambling about restyling it to film TikTok recipe videos. New lighting here, a fresh backsplash there, like the whole room was just a backdrop for her content. I needed air. I slipped out to the back patio, wrapped in the same shawl Cliff gave me our last Christmas together. The tea beside me had gone cold. I didn't mind. I wasn't here for comfort. I was here to listen. They didn't know I was outside. The sliding door was cracked just enough, and their voices carried easily through the stillness. "You promised she'd be out by Christmas," Chloe hissed. Her voice was sharp, not frantic. "Practiced. She hasn't said anything yet," Brian muttered. "She might just surprise us." "No, Brian. She's not going anywhere unless we make her. You said the house was ours." A pause. I could almost hear his hands running through his hair. "I said she gave it to us." "Same thing," she snapped. "She signed the deed. It's not her house anymore." I closed my eyes. My fingers gripped the arm of the chair. They thought it was already theirs. They thought the ink meant ownership. That signing meant surrender. They didn't know I had reversed the check. They didn't know I'd taken the deed back before they even had their first slice of wedding cake. "She's stalling," Chloe continued. "You know what she's doing. Acting sweet, dragging her feet, making sure we can't plan anything. It's manipulative." Manipulative. That word did something to me. I sat straighter. "She's not," Brian began, then sighed. "I just don't want to fight with her." "You already are," she said coldly. "She's winning, and you're letting her." I heard footsteps, the shuffle of movement, the clink of a glass. Then Brian's voice again, quieter. "I don't think she's as clueless as you think." He was right. For once, I waited a moment longer, just long enough to hear Chloe curse under her breath. Then I stood and walked softly down the garden path, far from the door, far from the life they were trying to script for me. I sat on the little bench Cliff built the year after his heart attack. It had faded in the sun, gone gray and soft at the edges, but it held me the way he used to, steady and quiet. They didn't know I was already gone in my mind. Gone from this house. Gone from their plans. Gone from their version of my life, where I played the old woman who hands over her keys and smiles through it. They didn't know about the new address I'd written under my maiden name. The cottage lease already signed. The utilities set to cancel the week after closing. I stood and walked back toward the house, silent as a shadow. Their argument was over. The lights in the kitchen flicked off. I didn't go back inside right away. I stood there in the dark, looking at the home I'd once filled with warmth, and I smiled. I knew this wasn't over, but I wasn't as helpless as they thought. A couple days later, Harold greeted me with a nod, and that same manila folder from last week. "Everything's in motion," he said. "We'll finalize the trust today, and your updated will is ready for signature." I sat down slowly, my purse still looped over my arm like armor. "Good," I said, "because I've got something new." He raised an eyebrow. I pulled out my phone and scrolled until I found the voicemail. Then I hit play. It was Chloe, her voice syrupy and sharp underneath. "Hi, just wondering if Ruth might need help managing her paperwork. She mentioned feeling foggy lately. With Cliff gone, I know she's overwhelmed. Does she have power of attorney on file? I'd love to assist if she doesn't." The message ended with a forced little laugh. Harold leaned back in his chair and exhaled through his nose. "She's testing boundaries. She thinks she's the only one with a playbook," I said. "She used Cliff's name like it was a coupon." He didn't laugh, just picked up a pen and started jotting down notes. "She called twice," I added. "Tried a different paralegal the second time. Claimed I was having trouble remembering things. Used the words cognitive fog. Said it might be time to discuss long-term planning." "That's not just nerve," Harold said. "That's preparation for a competency claim." I already knew that. I had known it the moment she said, fog. It was the same strategy she used when she wanted to discredit someone. Smile first, then twist the knife. "She's building a case," he said, "to take control. Then she needs to learn I've already closed the doors she thinks are still open." Harold nodded. "We'll file a protective declaration. Voluntary, of course. Establish that you're acting with full capacity. Today, on record, notarized. We'll include witness statements and timestamp every signature." "Do it," I said. He slid a packet across the table. I signed page after page. My hand cramped, but I didn't stop. He watched me for a long moment after. You don't have to prove anything, you know. Yes, I do, I said quietly. Because the second I don't, they'll try to erase me with paperwork and sweet voices. He didn't argue. Before I left, he added one last thing. I also checked your house deed. I tilted my head. Still in my name? He gave a tight smile. Untouched. No liens. No transfer applications. But here's the interesting part. Chloe ran a title search 2 weeks ago. I blinked. She wanted to see if she was already on it. The room felt colder, not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. She's not even waiting, I said. She thinks she's planting a flag. Harold closed the folder. Let her. You've already claimed the high ground. I left his office feeling tall. Not safe, exactly, but certain. They could play their games, make their calls, whisper about how tired I looked, how forgetful I'd become. But now, every whisper would hit a wall of notarized truth. Let them bring their questions, because I had my answers, signed, sealed, filed. I folded sweaters with more care than they deserved, labeled each container like I was moving gently through my own history. Winter clothes, Cliff's books, Christmas ornaments. The garage echoed with the sound of tape unspooling, sharp and final. The cottage lease was in my maiden name. A trick, Harold suggested. Gives you a layer of privacy, he said, and makes it harder for anyone to accidentally forward your mail. It was small. 2 bedrooms, a brick walkway lined with hydrangeas. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Untouched by their plans. Unseen by their search history. The utilities at the house were scheduled to shut off the day after closing. Power, water, gas, all set to end quietly. No announcement, no explanation. I was slipping out, not storming out. In the back corner of the garage, I found a dusty blue suitcase, the one we took on our last real vacation before Cliff got sick. I ran my hand over the handle. I packed it last, not because I was sentimental, but because I was strategic. Every move I made now had intention. I canceled my old landline, set up a new P.O. box, redirected all financial documents to Harold's office. Chloe had tried to weasel her way in through fake concern. She wouldn't find a crack now if she used a crowbar. I took down the family photos from the living room walls, not out of spite, but because I'd learned something. When people show you they see you as an obstacle, you stop offering them keepsakes. The house felt emptier by the hour, but lighter too. I stood in the kitchen and looked around one last time. The tile Chloe wanted to rip out. The pantry Brian once hid inside during hide and seek. The cabinets Cliff had repainted by hand during his recovery. Stubborn and proud even when he could barely stand. They didn't deserve it. Not the home, not the history, not the parts of me that lived in these walls. I knew exactly what I had to do. I invited them over for one last dinner before renovations. Chloe brought wine. A decent bottle for once. She looked relaxed, triumphant even. Like a cat who thought she'd finally caught the mouse. They didn't know I'd spent the morning handing over the house keys to my realtor, or that by this time next week someone else's name would be on the deed. This is lovely, Mom, Brian said, mouth full. Really, it feels good to be home. I smiled and refilled his glass. Chloe didn't say much. She was scanning the room like she already owned it, like she was cataloging what she'd replace, what she'd toss. At one point, she asked if I'd measured the windows yet. For custom drapes, you know. I just shook my head and said, "Oh, I'm sure you'll figure it out." Dinner moved slowly. I let it. We cleared plates together. I poured coffee. Then I reached into the drawer by the sink and pulled out a small white envelope. "No dessert," I said. "But I did want to give you something." Chloe's eyes lit up. She elbowed Brian. He looked confused, then intrigued. I handed it to her. Just one envelope. Light, clean, no weight to it at all. She opened it like a child at Christmas. Her face changed the second she read it. Inside was a single card. No check, no deed. Just a printed quote I'd cut from a magazine and glued onto a blank index card. "Some lessons are learned the hard way." Chloe stared at it, lips parted, like she couldn't decide whether to laugh or scream. Brian took it from her hand and read it slowly, then looked at me. "Mom?" I met his eyes. Not cold, not cruel, just clear. "That's it," I said. "That's all I have left to give." They didn't speak. Not right away. I stood and walked into the kitchen, grabbed a plate, pretended to scrape chicken bones into the trash like it was just another night. Behind me, the silence stretched. Then Chloe said, "What does this mean?" I turned. "It means I heard what you said. In the restroom, on your wedding day." Brian's face drained of color. "I gave you a chance to be honest. And instead, you started making plans." Chloe opened her mouth, but I raised a hand. "No more sweet texts. No more pamphlets about retirement villages. No more pretending this house is your inheritance." "You said," Brian started. "I know what I said. I also know what I signed, and what I unsigned." I laid the final plate in the sink, wiped my hands on a towel, turned back to face them. "You tried to make a future for yourselves by erasing mine." Chloe stood slowly, gripping her wine glass like it could anchor her. "You can't just—" "I can," I said. "And I already did." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just smiled and watched as the walls of their fantasy began to crumble. The porch light flickered on, just as Chloe's car pulled into the driveway. Too fast, tires squealing a little. She didn't even park straight. She was out before the engine stopped humming, storming up the path like she had every right to be there. Brian trailed behind her, slower, eyes already full of something he didn't want to name. I stood at the top step, arms crossed. "You sold it?" Chloe's voice was high and shrill, like she couldn't believe the words had come out of her mouth. "Yes," I said, her hands flailed in the air. "You can't just—" "What about us? That house was supposed to be ours." "You mean the one you said you'd kick me out of?" I asked calmly. Brian's face crumpled. "Mom, we didn't mean it like that." "No?" I tilted my head, because it sounded pretty specific. "Put her in a nursing home. Then the house is ours." "You said that, Brian. I heard it." He didn't deny it. He just looked down at the porch boards like maybe if he stared hard enough, the ground would swallow him. Chloe stepped forward. "We were joking. Everyone vents. You're taking it completely out of context." "No," I said. "You're trying to put your shame into a softer box. I won't pack it for you." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I stepped aside and handed Brian a folded envelope. "Final notice. Utilities end next week. Realtor has the keys. Closing papers were signed yesterday." Brian took the envelope with shaking hands. Chloe snatched it from him, unfolded it, and scanned every word like she could undo it just by glaring. "This is insane!" she hissed. "You can't just disappear and take everything with you. We needed that house." I stepped down to the bottom stair, met her eyes squarely. "You don't get to manipulate your way into what you never earned." Her face flushed deep red. "You're being vindictive." "No," I said. "I'm being clear." I turned to Brian then. "My son. My blood. The little boy who used to crawl into bed with me after nightmares. I would have given you everything," I said softly. "All you had to do was respect me." His eyes filled, but he didn't speak. Chloe grabbed his arm like she could keep him from breaking, even now. "You'll regret this," she muttered. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Only thing I regret is waiting this long to act." Then I turned and walked back inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't watch them leave. I let the porch light stay on behind me. Not for them, for me. Because I wanted to see clearly, even as I walked away. They thought love was a transaction, but I had finally learned being alone was better than being used. And sometimes the strongest goodbye is the one where you don't look back. On the closing day, Mrs. Cleary slid the papers into a manila envelope and smiled like she always did. Efficient, polite, no room for mess. "Congratulations," she said. "It's official. The buyers take possession Monday." I nodded. "Thank you." She offered me a handshake, but I wrapped my arms around the envelope instead. I didn't need ceremony. I needed closure. Outside, the air smelled like rain, even though the sky was still clear. I walked to my car without hurrying. There was nowhere I needed to be. Not urgently, anyway. The cottage key was already on my ring, waiting. Halfway to the parking lot, my phone rang. "Brian." I let it ring once. Twice. Then I answered. "Mom?" His voice cracked like it hadn't since he was 14. "What is it, Brian?" He exhaled hard. "Our lease ends in 4 days. The new place fell through. They backed out. We thought we'd be moved in by now." I waited. He kept going. "We tried to call the realtor. She said the house is already sold. Utilities are shutting off. Chloe's freaking out." I almost asked, "Which part of that surprises you?" But I didn't. He sounded small, real, like a boy again, but not the sweet one I remembered. Just a boy who'd been caught stealing from the wrong pocket. "You might try that retirement village," I said calmly. "I hear they have space." Silence. Then, "You're serious?" "I was serious the day I heard you both planning my exit behind a bathroom door." His voice dropped. "It wasn't supposed to be like this." "No," I said. "It wasn't. But you let her twist you into someone I don't recognize." There was a pause. Long. Heavy. Then, quietly, "We thought you'd never actually go through with it." That stopped me cold. That right there. "We thought you wouldn't." That was the foundation of all their plans. Not hope. Not love. Assumption. "Well," I said, steady as steel, "maybe next time, you'll remember who raised you." I hung up before he could respond. Not out of spite, out of mercy. Because anything I said after that would have been grief, not strength. I sat in my car for a long minute, let the silence wrap around me. Then I looked in the rearview mirror. I didn't look like a woman who just walked away from everything. I looked like someone who'd finally remembered her own worth. They thought the house was their win, that my silence was permission, that my age meant weakness. They were wrong on all counts. I didn't lose anything today. I reclaimed it. It was Susan Miller from Bridge Club who told me. Leaned in close between shuffles of the deck, eyes wide with delicious pity. "They're staying in Chloe's parents' garage," she whispered. "Fold-out sofa, no insulation. I heard there's a raccoon in the rafters." I didn't react, just laid down my card, Queen of Hearts, and said, "Your play." But inside, something deep and tired exhaled. I didn't feel triumph. Not quite. More like quiet confirmation. They were exactly who they revealed themselves to be, and now they were living inside their consequences. I imagined it. Chloe trying to do her makeup in a cracked mirror balanced on a camping table. Brian ducking every time the garage door clattered. Her mother asking for rent. Her father muttering about that house they blew. They hadn't spoken to me since the phone call. But Chloe posted on Facebook 3 days ago. Public, of course. A photo of her holding a half-empty wine glass. Hair in curlers, captioned, "Betrayed by family, but we rise." The comments were a mix of sympathy and confusion. Someone asked if she meant me. She didn't answer. I didn't comment. I didn't like it. I didn't even open the post again. Instead, I brewed a cup of tea and played another hand of bridge. The room was filled with laughter and gentle curses over missed cards. These women, some widowed, some divorced, some tougher than steel, had seen things, and they'd taught me something, whether they knew it or not. You don't have to respond to every attack. Sometimes you just hold your cards and let the fools play themselves out. They'd moved out of their apartment, thinking they were stepping into a dream, believing they had my house waiting like a throne. They'd even canceled their renter's insurance, because of course they had. And now they were huddled in someone else's space, with no title, no power, no plan. I thought about texting Brian, just something simple. "I hope you're warm." But I didn't, because even now, especially now, I knew how they'd twist it. They'd see a crack and try to climb through. And I wasn't opening another door for people who'd only ever asked, "What else can we take?" Let Chloe find her lessons between the garage fumes and her next filtered caption. Let Brian sit in the cold and think about all the things he didn't say when he should have. They called it betrayal. I called it boundaries. And the only reason it stung is because they'd never